Hi, welcome to this tutorial series on Spring IOC. In this video, I'm going to explain about bean scopes. So, bean scope, we have five type of bean scopes. So, so I will be using this project to explain the bean scopes. So, I have here the project class and the comment class. These are the two project classes that I'm using from last couples of tutorials. So we generally have five type of bean scopes. We have singleton, prototype, request, session, application. So by default, any bean that is actually declared in our XML file, that is by default it is singleton. So if we see our spring.xml file, so let's take this example. I have a comment bean declared here. So this bean is by default it is a singleton. It means I have not provided any scope to this bean. So we have to use scope attribute to declare and to give any different scope to any bean. So right now there is no scope for this bean, so it is a singleton. So it means whenever this spring.xml file loads by Spring container, it will check this bean. There is a bean with ID, comment and class name is this one, and it will create a singleton object for this bean. It means the same object will be passed to whenever I use the get bean of the application context or bean factory. So if we take this example, so I have this test class here. I have abstract application context, and since I'm using get bean here, so whenever I use a get bean for any singleton bean, the same object will be provided again and again. So if I have one more get bean statement here, let's say I have something here, so this will be project 1. So project 1 and project will be the same object that is provided by the container. So that is the singleton scope. So let's take let's create let's take this example, same example. So in our project class we have what we have. Let's remove the some of the extra code here. So let's remove this one also, and this one we have to remove. Okay, so in this class we have two properties, ID and project name. So I have the setter method for both of them, and in my test class, let's remove all those. So in my test class I'm actually getting this bean two times. So if we see this project bean, so right now we have a lot of properties here. Just to remove those properties, these are actually I was using in my last tutorial to explain about the collection in Spring IOC. So here I have explained list, set and map. So for this video we don't need these properties, so let's remove those. So here, let's copy it from here, and let's remove this also. Okay, so project I'm giving ID as 10, so I'm using setter injection using property tag to provide the values, and the project name, let's give something p1. Okay, so I have only one bean declared into my spring.xml file, so I am getting this bean two times. So let's don't set the values here, let's remove those values. So I'm just getting the object of this class. So let's set the value here, this dot. So set the project dot set id, or let's give a name as p1 and id as, let's provide some id. Okay, so I have given the values to properties here. So first I'm getting the bean. So here the bean, when bean will be created, so new object will be provided to us. So here the object will be created. So here I'm setting the values. So let's print it here. So we can use system dot out dot println to print object, because we are we are having the toString method already overridden. If you see our project class, the toString method I have overridden, so we can use this sort here and here also for project 1. Since for project 1 I am not providing any of values, so project 1, let's check the values for project 1. So let's use project here and project 1 here. Okay, so we can test this class now. So let's check the values for project and project 1. So as we see here, the same value will be provided to both objects because the object is actually same. The values that I am setting here is provided to this object also. So here we are using get bean two times, but still we are getting the same value, that is that we have provided to the previous object. So it means the one object is created by default whenever we are using the singleton. So if we, by default it is singleton, so if we use scope equal to singleton, then it will behave as a singleton also. So by default it is a singleton, or we can also set the scope as a singleton. So as we see, we are getting the same value. So we have second scope, that is prototype. So if we use prototype here, prototype, so let's check the values now. So here we are getting null value because we have a prototype scope. So when we use a prototype scope, a new object will be created to particular bean. So the same object will not be provided to whenever we use a get bean. So when this spring.xml file loads by the Spring container, it create an object of this bean. So it see there is a scope as a prototype. So whenever get bean happen, the new object will be created for that bean. So if we create one more object here, so let's say if we create project 2, so same thing happen here also, a new object will be created here also. See, new object will be created every time whenever we use the get bean. So that is that is our prototype scope. So whenever we need in our application we have a requirement like this, we want a new object of particular beans every time, so we can use prototype scope. So we have three other types of scopes. So these are web application scope, web aware scopes. So here I am actually explaining Spring IOC. So I have not created any Spring MVC project. So this scope, for this scope I will be explaining with example in my tutorial, other tutorials when I create a Spring MVC tutorials. So here I will explain some of the little description about these scopes. So request scope we use for whenever we have a sublet request to particular class, whenever we need particular class have a new object per request. So when a servlet request came, we want that particular project class which is declared into XML file, and that project class will have a new object created each time whenever request came. So in that the requirements such requirements we can use request scope. So new object will be created every time whenever a servlet request came. So that is our request scope. So here in our swing.xml file we can change this to request scope. So for this project bean, whenever sublet request came, a new object will be created every time. So that is our request scope. So session scope is the object will be created, same object will be a new object will be created per session. So whenever we have a HTTP session, so if you use a session here, so for this bean, a new object will be created per session. So when a new user log in and he has a session to web application, for that particular user, for this bean will be having a new object created. So application scope is something, as we know, in our web application we have a application scope already in our web application, which is actually a single object per application. So in servlet and JSP, if we have a application scope in our JSP file for particular object, so that particular object will be provided to the application, which means we can use that particular object anywhere in our application using application context object. So whenever that application stops, that application context will be destroyed. So that is our application scope into sublet JSP application. So application scope in our Spring web application are something, a one object will be created per application. So same thing happen here. So this application, uh, for example, if I use application here in this bean, so it means the project bean will be having the application scope, and this bean can be used anywhere in the application till the application starts, till the application is live. So whenever the application is stopped, the servlet container or any server stop and the application is stopped, and at that same time this application scope object will be destroyed. So that is our application scope. So I will create a separate tutorial for these three scopes in Spring MVC tutorial. So that's all for this video. And this so in this way we can use the different scopes of the beans, so as per our requirements. So thanks for watching, thanks for your time, bye bye.